You know what the single biggest lie is? It's not what the politicians tell you during election season, and it's not even what your ex told you during the breakup. The biggest lie you have ever been told, repeated by your school teachers, your parents, and every slick TV commercial you've ever seen, is that your money is safe and growing inside your bank account. That is a complete fabrication. The cold, hard truth that the system desperately hopes you never figure out is that while the digital number on your banking app might tick up slightly because of those laughable interest rates, the actual value, the real purchasing power of that money, is melting away faster than an ice cube in the middle of the Sahara, with inflation tearing through the roof and banks paying you absolute crumbs in return. Keeping cash in the bank is not saving. It is literally burning a hole in your pocket. You are paying the bank to lose your money. But hold on, don't panic just yet, because I'm not here to just give you the bad news. In this video, we are going to break down 6 specific assets that will stop this wealth erosion dead in its tracks and help you create the kind of intergenerational wealth that your grandchildren will talk about at dinner parties. But before I hand you the keys to the kingdom, you need to pay very close attention to this next part. If you want to actually master the game of money and stop being played for a fool by a rigged system, you need to subscribe and hit that bell right now, because what I am about to tell you in the next few minutes changes absolutely everything about how you view your financial future. Let's get into it. The first asset on our list is what history refers to as God's money. We are talking about gold, silver, and platinum. And listen, there is a very serious reason why this is number 1 on the list. The primary reason we consider money valuable in the first place is the belief that it stores value for the future. We trust that the work we do today can be stored in a bill and used next year. However, modern governments have become completely addicted to printing more and more money to finance their massive deficits. It is like they are watering down the soup every single day, hoping nobody notices the taste changing. Therefore, you never truly know when that piece of colored paper you call the dollar, euro, or pound will become essentially worthless. This is exactly why financial gurus and the ultra-wealthy never shut up about investing in something valuable that is genuinely scarce and cannot be created out of thin air just because a central banker decides to press a button on a keyboard. But wait, it gets much deeper than just scarcity. This is the biggest reason why the rich always have a significant portion of their portfolio reserved for precious metals. Gold, silver, and platinum have this annoying habit of always rising in value exactly when inflation decides to rip through the ceiling. To give you a concrete picture of how much you are losing by holding cash, look at history. Before the 1950s, an ounce of gold could be bought for around $400. Fast forward to 2025, that same little yellow pebble costs more than $4,000. Think about that for a second. The currency didn't just stumble, it fell off a cliff. And according to the latest forecasts from PrimeXBT and other major analysts, this trajectory is supposed to shoot up to $10,000 by 2032. We are talking about multiplying your capital by 2.5 times in just 6 years. So, while your cash keeps going down the drain, gold keeps climbing the mountain. And if you are sitting there wondering how you are supposed to gain gold exposure without having to buy physical bars and bury them in your backyard like a pirate, I have good news. You don't need to buy physical gold if you don't want to. You can invest in gold ETFs. These are highly affordable investment vehicles that give you returns based on gold price movements without you ever having to buy a safe or worry about security guards. It's all the profit with none of the hassle. Now, pay attention, because the second asset is where the real economy lives and breathes. We are moving from God's money to the engines of mankind, industrial commodities. While scarcity is one reason why precious metals are considered precious, industrial commodities have something else entirely: raw utility. The modern world simply cannot function without them. Take silver, for example. People think it's just for jewelry, but that's wrong. Silver is indispensable in the production of electronics, medical equipment, nuclear reactors, and basically everything that runs our society. Similarly, other metals like cobalt, nickel, and copper have insanely high industrial demand due to their natural properties that cannot be easily replicated by plastic or wood. You can't build a future on dreams, you need raw materials. Here is where the magic happens for investors who are paying attention. To draw a much clearer picture, since 2020, the demand for cobalt has absolutely skyrocketed. The biggest reason? The batteries for electric vehicles. The entire world is shifting to green energy, but green energy requires a lot of mining. Consequently, the price more than doubled from $20,000 per ton in 2012 to $48,000 in 2025. That is another 100% increase in essentially a decade. Therefore, having exposure to such raw materials can significantly boost your portfolio during high-demand phases. But let's be real for a second. Not everyone can invest huge sums of money in acquiring tons of raw cobalt, nor can we physically store it in our garage next to the lawnmower. Therefore, the smart play is investing in stocks of mining companies such as Rio Tinto, mining-focused mutual funds, or even derivatives like futures and options. These are all great ways of gaining that exposure without getting your hands dirty. But hold on, because there is a trap in the global economy that most people don't see until it's too late. In the current fiat currencies, where no currency is backed by gold anymore, geopolitical stability is the single most crucial factor when investing your money. This is why we need to talk about safe haven currencies. Have you ever wondered why the super rich always keep their money in Swiss banks? It's not just because they like chocolate and skiing. Switzerland has one of the world's strongest economic systems and offers a geopolitical environment that is essentially a financial bomb shelter. Therefore, the Swiss franc is considered a safe haven asset in times of turmoil and instability. We've seen this time and again. For example, during the Eurozone debt crisis in 2009 and the global financial crisis in 2008, massive amounts of funds flew out of struggling countries and straight into Switzerland to prevent wealth erosion. And the plot thickens even more when you look at recent history. The Swiss franc acts as a valuable alternative to the US dollar for international trade. For instance, during the geopolitical tensions involving Russia and Ukraine, when sanctions were flying left and right, we saw trade executions shifting currencies. Such events soared the demand for the Swiss franc, leading to its tremendous appreciation against almost all other currencies. In early 2023, one Swiss franc fetched around 1.10 US dollars, but currently it is hovering around 1.25 US dollars. That is a massive jump in the world of Forex. Therefore, holding superior currencies such as the Swiss franc, British pound, or even diversifiers like the Chinese yuan is a great store of value. And no, you don't need to fly to Zurich to open a bank account with a secret code. Currency ETFs and Forex brokers like Forex.com help smaller investors gain currency exposure with as little as $100. Now, let's pivot to something that sounds boring, but is actually the bedrock of the entire financial system: sovereign guarantee. Have you ever looked at a dollar bill very closely? It has the words, "This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private." Have you ever stopped to wonder what that actually means? Since 1971, when President Nixon abolished the gold standard, the dollar became legal tender purely by U.S. law. This made it valuable as a medium of exchange, and we started considering it a commensurate repayment for any good or service. Although no fiat currency in the world is backed by gold or any other physical asset anymore, they are still considered to be backed by the full faith and credit of the government. But here is the catch that you need to understand. In plain terms, your money is only as stable as the government that backs it. This is why investing in sovereign guarantee is a valuable store of value, but you have to be selective. The government of any nation is always the last to default. If the US government defaults, the whole nation defaults, and honestly, at that point, we will probably be trading canned beans and ammunition rather than stocks. Therefore, one of the safest ways of investing in sovereign guarantee is through government securities. However, only stable government securities with investment-grade credit ratings are advisable. Remember the 2009 sovereign debt crisis in Greece? The IMF and European Central Bank had to bail them out multiple times. Therefore, a government's global strength should always be the first thing you look at. In the US, you can invest in treasury bills, notes, and bonds. These offer better returns than keeping money in a savings account, and they are backed by the US government's strength in the global economy. It's what economists call the risk-free rate, and it's a sanctuary for your cash. However, there is a problem with safety. Safety doesn't usually make you rich. It just keeps you from getting poor. Treasury investments definitely provide a better return than cash. However, because of low risk, they offer lower returns than stocks. And while low risk is a crucial investment criterion for people who are terrified of losing a single cent, higher returns are sought by almost all investors who want to actually grow their wealth. This brings us to value stocks and mutual funds. Stocks are a great way of achieving growth, but not every stock is created equal. In fact, the stock market is broadly divided into two types: value stocks and growth stocks. Growth stocks, such as the trendy technology companies you hear about on the news, are riskier because they deal in ideas, potential, and technologies that have a high failure potential. They are selling you a dream of the future. But listen to this, because this is where the smart money lives. Value stocks, such as Nucor, which deals in industrial metals, are less risky due to established demand for the foreseeable future. These companies aren't trying to invent the next flying car. They're selling the steel that builds the bridges we drive on today. Therefore, value stocks with strong fundamentals not only provide steady and stable price appreciation, but also provide stable dividends. Dividends are literally cash payments deposited into your account just for owning the stock. It is the closest thing to passive income you will find in the market. However, researching the fundamentals of each and every value stock can become very time-consuming and cumbersome for average investors. Therefore, dividend-focused mutual funds, such as the Vanguard High Dividend Yield Index Fund, are ideal. They do the hard work for you, creating an affordable investment vehicle that lets you sleep well at night. And now we arrive at the asset class that your grandparents were right about all along: land and real estate. Accountants consider land as a non-depreciable asset for a very valid reason. It is scarce, and God isn't making any more of it. Since the beginning of time, land has been one of the most valuable resources in the world. We need land for homes, schools, factories, agriculture, and commercial spaces. And with a growing human population, that demand is mathematically impossible to drop. Similarly, residential homes and office spaces built on that land are always in demand. Therefore, both land and real estate act as excellent inflation hedges in your investment portfolio. But wait until you hear the numbers, because they are staggering. According to a Bloomberg study, housing prices have quadrupled between 1992 and 2025. Think about that. Despite the huge dip during the 2008 housing bubble and all the economic crises in between, the trajectory has been violently upward. Therefore, having real estate exposure always comes in handy when the dollar starts losing value. However, most small investors make a fatal mistake. They only think of getting into real estate much later in their lives because they think they need to buy a whole house to participate. They view real estate only in terms of the house they live in. While owning a fully paid-up home is a great net worth goal for when you're in your 40s, having a slice of the retail property market is recommended at every age. Here is the secret that the wealthy use to dominate this sector without going into massive debt. Against the most common belief, you don't need to have a lot of money to gain real estate exposure. You can invest in REITs, or real estate investment trusts, which are similar to mutual funds but specifically for real estate. One of the most popular REITs in the US is Ventas, which invests in healthcare real estate, including senior housing, research facilities, and hospitals. Think about the demographics. The population is aging, and they need care. By investing in a REIT like that, you are profiting from an inevitable demographic trend. Or else, if you have the capital, you can borrow to own rental properties. Your tenants pay off your mortgage, cover your expenses, and you pocket the appreciation. It is the ultimate form of using other people's money to get rich. Finally, we have the most fun yet surprisingly lucrative asset class: collectibles. We're talking about vintage cars, rare art pieces, handcrafted luxury handbags, limited edition watches, and even the first edition of iconic books. In the case of a regular car, the price depreciates by half the moment you drive it off the lot. It's a terrible investment. However, the math works in reverse for vintage cars. Like fine wine, they get more valuable with time because they're pieces of history. In fact, according to Autocar, a 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR was sold in 2022 for an eye-watering 135 million euros. Only 2 such cars have ever been produced. Scarcity drives value in a way that defies logic. But it's not just cars. Pay attention to the art world. Similarly, in 2017, Leonardo da Vinci's most controversial painting, Salvator Mundi, was bought for a massive $450 million at a Christie's auction by a Saudi prince. The reason why the rich spend significantly high amounts of money on limited edition products is that these unique pieces are timeless repositories of value. They can fetch an imaginably high price if you find the right buyer. They exist outside the regular financial system. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds great, but I don't have $100 million lying around. And this is where technology has completely democratized wealth. For average investors, investing in collectibles used to be a distant dream. But today, online marketplaces like Whatnot are fantastic options for selling rare baseball cards, comic books, action figures, and much more. And if you can't buy the whole thing, you can even invest in partial ownership of high-end collectibles on platforms like Masterworks. You can own a fraction of a Banksy or a Warhol. You get the appreciation without needing a climate-controlled vault in your house. So there you have it, the tools to stop the bleeding and start building real, tangible wealth. But listen to me very carefully right now. Understanding these assets is only the first step. The global financial system is flashing warning signs that most people are completely ignoring because they are too distracted by social media and celebrity gossip. If you enjoyed knowing how to protect your money from inflation and the banking system's lies, you are going to absolutely lose your mind when you watch the 2026 crash, Your Last Chance to Get Rich. It completes exactly what we talked about here and gives you the specific timeline of the chaos that is coming. Click that video right now because the clock is ticking and you do not want to be on the wrong side of history.